Welcome back to Matt's Automotive Channel. We have the old clutch completely out, and so we'll go ahead and start reassembling it on this video. But one thing I want to do first is take a look at the old clutch. So we'll cut that open. I want to see if there's any kind of mechanical issues with it, and see if both of the clutch discs wore unevenly or something else was going on. So anyway, let's start by cutting that apart and taking a look at it. Okay, now we have the whole assembly taken apart, and we got the two clutches over here. And when comparing them, they look pretty darn evenly worn. One isn't worn more than the other, so I don't believe there's any kind of mechanical failure in the clutch system. I think what we observe here is just normal wear. And on the floater plate here, there's some burn marks on both sides, not real bad, but anyway, look at the thickness of that. This is a very heavy, huge plate. I just can't believe how big and heavy this clutch is. Then here's a look at the back side of the clutch. Again, a few burn marks, and again, this is just really thick, heavy steel. Here's a look at the new clutch that we purchased. It was purchased through American Muscle. It's an XD Stage 4 twin disc organic clutch for GT500s 07 to 2014. After unboxing the clutch, you can see that it comes kind of pre-assembled here. The flywheel is bolted to the pressure plate, but we're going to have to take this apart in order to get the flywheel onto the car. All right, let's start by taking these bolts out and separating the flywheel from the clutch. Let's do a little bit at a time here. These fingers will start to come out as we loosen the pressure. And you don't want to undo any one bolt at any given time. You just kind of want to work your way around, do it slowly so it doesn't torque this thing or get it uneven or put any weird pressure points on it. You can kind of see where you are just so you can see these fingers come up a little bit, and just try to keep them even as possible. Okay, I think we got all the pressure relieved now. Okay, now we can lift the pressure plate off. And before final assembly, you can see that we're going to have to get the oil off that it's shipped with. They do put a coating of oil on all the steel surfaces so it doesn't rust. Just out of curiosity, I went ahead and weighed the difference between the two clutches. The stock clutch weighed in at 36.4 and the stock flywheel at 15 pounds for a total of 51.4 pounds. The XD Stage 4 clutch that we just got weighed in at 23.2 pounds, flywheel at 16.2 pounds for a total weight of 39.4 pounds. So the XD clutch and flywheel is actually lighter by 12 pounds. Here's a little something that I wanted to show you that I think is going to make the installation of the new clutch much easier than pulling the old one out, and that's the fact that the depth of the old clutch is much greater than that of the new clutch. So this is going to give us a lot more room to maneuver. We may not even have to clock the bell housing sideways in order to get this in. But if we look at the difference here, a straight edge here over the fingers of that, then we go down to the fingers of that, which the thing has to clear, we're looking at about 1.25 inches difference in thickness. So that's pretty significant. So it'll be interesting to see when we put it in how much easier this new one will install. And also because of that difference in thickness, that also means that the slave cylinder that we have for the stock one for the GT500 is not going to work. And so we'll need to get one that extends out a bit more, probably by about 1.25 inches. However, we'll check all that and the clearances before you put it back together. But I ended up Now, I did not get the Exity slave cylinder, which is recommended for this, just simply because of price. So I went ahead and I got a deal on one from O'Reilly's that was significantly less money and had really good ratings. And they're made for the 4.8 liter and the V6, and they are definitely longer. When I get that today, I'll make a comparison side by side and show you. But this one obviously would not work with this new clutch setup. Let's go ahead and remove the slave cylinder. Here's a comparison of our new and old slave cylinders. So let's look at the difference in height here. Put a straight edge on top of this and then measure down. And it looks like we're right about an inch and a quarter, just a little less than an inch and a quarter. So it's going to be pretty darn close. Once we get the clutch, the flywheel and the clutch assembly back on the car, we'll go ahead and take some measurements, as long as measurements from the bell housing when this is in, and we'll check our clearances. Let's get started by installing our new pilot bearing. First of all, you want to make sure, compared to the old one, make sure it's the same diameter, and then also make sure that it's going to slide over the input shaft with no problem, because if there's an issue here, you're going to have an issue when trying to put the transmission back in. This one fits on great and rotates around there, so it's definitely the right size. So let's go ahead and prep the surface on the crankshaft and insert this bearing. If you want to make sure that the opening here is free of debris, make sure it's all nice and clean. And go ahead and set this in here. And you'll want to tap it in with, I'm going to use a socket that's the same outer diameter here. You don't want anything hitting this inner portion of the bearing, because it'll push it out towards the back. So that lined up there, and then we'll just kind of tap her in. And just keep tapping it till it bottoms out. All right, change. We got a little heavier hammer. That one's just going too slow. Okay, that's in nice and flat now. All right, and then we'll also want to make sure that this surface here is clean, because the flywheel bolts up to this, and you definitely don't want any debris or anything on here that's going to make it fit unevenly around here. So definitely give this a good cleaning before you bolt the flywheel on. As you may have noticed, one of the alignment dowels stayed in the transmission, the other one's still in the block. They should both be in the block, because before we put the flywheel on, we're going to want to put this plate on, the separator plate, and on the block side, these alignment dowels will hold it in place while we mount the clutch. So anyway, we're going to pull this and then reinstall it into the block. There we are, just pulled it out, and then we'll just tap it into the block. As you can see, we got the one over here, but it's missing over here. So we'll go ahead and just tap this one in now. All right, now we can go ahead and put the spacer plate on. Let's hit the flywheel with some brake clean and get all that oil off. Just a quick note before trying to put the flywheel on, note that these bolt holes are not all evenly spaced. If you look here, you'll see there's a spacing from one hole to the other. And if you compare here, it's like way off. So in order to get it right the first time, instead of having to clock this thing around here, just find out which ones are the close ones together. In that case, it's here. So these two holes will match up with these two holes on the flywheel. Now we can go ahead and put the flywheel on, and these bolts will get torqued down to 63 pound-feet. Okay, I'm gonna just put these bolts in and get the flywheel on there flush first, and then we'll pull these bolts back out and then put some blue Loctite on them. All right, now we have blue Loctite on our bolts, so now we can reinstall them and torque them down to 63 pound-feet. To hold the flywheel in place, I just put the bar through the flywheel and into a hole there. So that should hold it in place while we torque these down. And you want to do this in a crisscross pattern. So like one here, then opposite, and then next opposite, next opposite, next opposite, like so. Looking at the instructions here for the order in which we reassemble the clutch, number one is the flywheel, which we already have on. So next will be the flywheel disc, which is going to be this guy here. Now notice that this disc, it has a side that protrudes out and then a side that's pretty flat. It's the flat side that goes to the flywheel, as illustrated here. And then after we have that disc on, then we'll put the rest of the clutch cover sub-assembly on, which is the remainder of this. So the pressure plate. So first of all, let's make sure that our alignment tool goes into the pilot bearing. And it does, no issue there. All right, before we put this assembly on, let's make sure that we got all the oil off of it. That's pretty bad. To be honest, I am very tempted to take this assembly apart and make sure all the oil is off on the inside too, but the instructions state that it's not necessary to pull this apart, so I guess I'll take their word for it. One other thing to note before putting the rest of the assembly together, you'll notice a little blue mark right there on the flywheel. That needs to line up with the blue mark here that's on this clutch assembly. It does mention here in the instructions, caution, if marking is not met, it will cause an unbalanced noise and vibration. So make sure that the blue painted marks are aligned. And then once the assembly is together, this is the sequence in which they want you to torque the bolts down. And the specified torque is 16.8 to 24.4 pound-feet. I went ahead and put the other disc on this assembly, so we'll just put it all in together. This really would be best with two people. Okay, that's good enough to hold it. We got all the bolts in there. They're just all finger tight at this point. And as you notice, when you tighten one down, the other ones will become loose. And these fingers here that are protruding out will get squished in. And you can tell here, if you put a straight edge across it here, you can see that these spring little fingers here are out beyond this little ridge here. When this thing's fully seated, these will be in, and you can put this here and it won't touch these fingers. So anyway, we're going to do this little by little, and we'll do it in the pattern that they recommended. All right, so I'm going to do it initially with this electric ratchet because it's just much quicker. And then when they finally bottom out, then we'll go ahead and do it with the torque wrench in various stages. So. Okay, they've all bottomed out. I haven't torqued them down yet. But you'll see that these fingers here are definitely have gone in, and they no longer hit. They're below the surface of this plate here. And we need to make sure that our alignment tool still moves in and out freely. It does. And make sure that everything is totally aligned, because if this isn't aligned, you're gonna have problems getting the clutch back in. So everything looks perfectly aligned there. You can see the pilot bearing even. So, okay, I'll put the alignment tool back in and then we'll torque it down. Let's do our final torquing. I'm going to do it to 24 pound-feet, which is at the high end. 1. Again, once everything's torqued, make sure that the alignment tool slides in and out easily. If not, you will have problems. So anyway, that slides all the way in through both clutch plates and the pilot bearing. Let's get ready to put the slave cylinder on. But first, let's just put a little bit of grease on these splines here. Now to help spread it around on the splines, I'll just take the old clutch disc and just run it back and forth on there a few times. Okay, and then wipe off the excess. Go ahead and install the slave cylinder at this point. Remember to take the little cap off. Some recommend bleeding the slave cylinder first. You can actually dip this in to some brake fluid and then you know, compress this and then soak it up. But I don't like to do that because once this is full of brake fluid, and you put this in, and then as you push the clutch on, this gets compressed and it shoots brake fluid out at you. So it'll bleed out anyway. It just may take a little longer. So anyway, I'm going to install it like this. Okay, and then this should just kind of clip into there. And then these get torqued to 9 pound-feet or 108 inch-pounds. Okay, you may have seen that this little clip came out. This goes in only one way. If you look at the end, you'll see this little protrusion here. That goes facing up in the 12 o'clock position. We should just be able to push that in and it should click in place. All right, I think we'll call it quits for here and we'll finish the install in the next video. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.